Airbnb horror stories. I cannot wait to have this episode here with Mitch Pomeroy. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the annoying of Airbnb. Hey guys, welcome into the Fearless Investor Podcast. You're listening to me, Kyle Stanley, and I'm excited to have this topic today. And I know as soon as you hear about all these bad stories, you're just going to be jumping and dying to get into Airbnb, right? Well, we're going to talk about how we also deal with these situations today. But I think by the end, you'll probably feel a little bit better about this. And if you do feel that way, I think you ought to go to fearlesskyle.com, go to the Airbnb tab. We got a 20% discount going on right now on the Airbnb Kickstart course, usually $1,247. Right now it's $997, and you can get a jumpstart into a six-figure, almost completely passive business. And we're going to talk about a lot of the things today of how you deal with these situations and how you really mitigate all the risk. But I just wanted to have some fun and just talk about the elephant in the room, which is, what are your worst Airbnb stories? Have you seen people that are getting arrested? Have you seen, you've heard about some of the horror stories in like the Bay Area of someone got killed in an Airbnb, and like, how, Kyle, do you avoid all those things? And guess what? There's some things that you just can't avoid, but they make for really good stories. And then there's some things that you can avoid, and we've learned, and we're going to teach you some of those things too. So Mitch Pomeroy, one of my really good friends here, we mastermind about Airbnb all the time. We both have a bunch of units in Fresno, California. We're both looking to move on to another market right now. But we have some entertaining ones for sure today. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the annoying here with Mitch Pomeroy. All right, guys, this is something I'm going to call the good, bad, and the annoying here for Airbnb. And Mitch Pomeroy is on the show with us today. So before we get too far, Mitch, thanks so much for being on today, man.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
We're going to have some fun today. But Mitch and I both have over 25 units here in Fresno and Clovis, California. Mitch is about to be over 30, which golf clap. Congratulations, brother. And we are both kind of just about once a week or once every other week, we kind of mastermind and talk about stuff. And we had this idea of like, maybe we should start recording these conversations because there's so much good stuff. And I think the thing that I love about our stories is just, or our conversations, is the stories that we end up having. And so I wanted to just get on here and not color code anything and just tell people about the real shitty situations that we go through being Airbnb hosts, but how they end up being pretty entertaining stories. So does that sound like fun to you today?
Sounds like we're going to have some fun.
Perfect. Well, I'll open the floor up to you first. I know you got some notes on some stories. So tell me about one of the ones that you've been excited to share with the audience.
So we had one actually this past weekend where I had to talk to my one of my managers this morning, and he had some that I had kind of forgot about, and I was like, that's right, okay. But one of the most recent ones was we had a company, solar company, that was staying in a property in North Fresno.
Yep.
Nice neighborhood. We've never had any issues or anything like that. And all of a sudden I get a message with pictures with trash all over the front yard and all over their car. And so what happened was the neighbor, I guess, got upset because one of the challenges with short-term rentals is trash, and even though like we put boards inside and, we're trying to let people know, what days to take the trash out or messaging, So anyways, the trash cans were not in front of their house. It was actually in the little part of the curb between us and them.
Okay.
Wasn't falling onto the concrete or anything. Anyways, I guess the neighbor got upset about the trash and took the trash can and threw the trash all over our guest's car and all over the driveway and the front yard. And I was like, wow.
So we're not even talking about a bad Airbnb guest. We're talking about a bad neighbor. That's ridiculous.
Talking about a neighbor, yeah.
Oh my God.
And they left a nasty note on the car. And so it got to the point where the guest called the police. And they took a police report because they tried to talk to the neighbor. The neighbor never came over, like ring the doorbell or anything like that. They just, maybe they were having a bad day. I don't know.
Oh my
but
gosh.
Yeah, so that was more of like we'll start it off with a bad neighbor, because that was
I got a bad neighbor story too, but I mean, just so like I know you and I have talked about this, but just so the audience knows, like in the beginning, I was knocking on neighbors' doors and telling them what I was doing just to give them like peace of mind. And here's my phone number. And now I don't do that anymore because of this neighbor story I'm about to tell you right now. But also because you just get calls and texts about the dumbest things. Like, hey, your person just checked out, but a light is still on the porch. I'm like, stop calling me. That's not why I gave you my number. But we had one, man. So I got an investor that helped buy a property. And, I went to some mentors and I was like, hey, we got this garage. We want to convert it. Do you think I should get it permitted? And they were like, well, if someone calls, then maybe get it permitted, yada, yada, yada. So I was like, all right, let's just go ahead and get the work started. Well, day one, I get a call from my contractor and they're like, your neighbor came out and started like cussing out my workers. And I was like, what do you mean? And so I went over there and I had introduced myself to one of the neighbors before, but I had not met this neighbor on the right side of the house. And I knock on his door, no answer. I knock on the neighbor on the left side, and both of them, both the neighbor in the right and the left, are inside the left neighbor's house, and they're complaining about the issue that happened earlier today. And so I was like, hey, this is a really bad way to meet, but shook his hand. And this guy just like, he wouldn't look me in the eye. He wouldn't talk to me. He's like, I'm going to report you to the city, yada, yada. I was like, whoa, like, let's hold on for a second. So I tried to like basically kind of keep the peace. And Mitch, I mean, these guys just decided that I was a terrible human being and that I was not going to be their friend. I went as far as to write a handwritten note to both of these neighbors being like, so sorry for the rough start. Hopefully we'll look back and this will be okay. The guy on the right actually really took well to that note, and I saw him another time and he was like, hey, I just want to let you know, even though we got off to a rocky start, like I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate your communication. The one on the left, to this day, I'll get a text from him every once in a while being like, we're going to call the cops because someone's making noise at 7 p.m. at night. And like, they have decided they are not going to like anything I'm doing. And so I don't talk to neighbors anymore.
What's funny is I know somebody else in Southern California doing this, and they had the same scenario happen where they had like like a sub room off their garage that they were doing short-term Airbnb rentals with, and one of their neighbors turned them in, and so they had to go through this whole issue with the city and all that kind of stuff. And the funny thing was, within 6 months, that same neighbor started doing Airbnb.
Oh my gosh!
And it was like a 2-year battle before that. Like they were like. I don't know. I guess they were just upset. Instead of coming over and like, hey, what are you doing? Is
that if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing?
I guess so. And so now it's funny because like that person now is doing the exact same thing that they were complaining about for 2 years.
Well, what's funny? That same neighbor, like it really came to a peak when COVID happened. So the neighbor on the left that just decided they didn't like me, they were like, we don't want to live next to a hotel. I was like, I understand, but I'm a property manager and I'm just doing my job. So I don't know what to tell you. And they were like, well, that's not good enough. And anyway, long story short, COVID happened. And so I don't know if you did this with any of yours, but I kind of like, okay, let's maybe if there's a travel ban, we need to like do some longer term tenants. So I went on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, posted a couple rooms. And this was one of the houses that I turned over to a regular rental. And then I get a call from the police saying that they were at that house and that there was a domestic violence situation going on. And so I ran over there and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just another reason why I will never be a regular landlord because I just don't want to deal with this stuff. And so I get over there and the guy on the left is pulling up and he talks to the cops for a second. Then he gets out of his car and I walk over to him to try to explain the situation. He goes, you get back over there. I don't want to talk to you. And I was like, I just want to let you know the situation. He's like, I've already told you that this was a bad idea, that you shouldn't do Airbnb. And I was just like, dude, this isn't Airbnb. This is a regular tenant. This is exactly why I told you that Airbnb is better. And he was just like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, this is Airbnb. Like we get high quality people because they can pay for it, because they actually can afford it, because they want a place of their own to stay for a couple nights. This person is trying to trash my place and beat up his girlfriend. So which would you rather be next to? And
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was really, really weird situation. And ever since then, Mitch, I just don't go into that neighborhood. I refuse to drive down the neighborhood. I send runners and I send some boots on the ground to go over and do things over there. Not me.
We yeah, one of the properties that I had told you about, the golf course house.
Yeah.
So when we first got the golf course house, the previous renter also had an Airbnb there as well.
Okay.
And so when we first took over, you know, same thing. Like I'm not going out there and broadcasting to everybody what we're doing or how we're doing it. We do a lot more corporate housing, now than just like regular, fly by night people.
Right.
But we've seen, the full gamut of it.
Yeah.
So we rent the house off the golf course, and comes to find out later on, the property manager, actually one of the neighbors next door called me, and I knew who he was. He was actually one of my vendors, one of my AC vendors. So he starts telling me all the stories of what had happened for the previous 2 years, and I, assured him, yeah, that's not the type of business we run. But what had happened was they were having like orgy parties and drug parties. Whoa. And like people, there was like naked girls running around in the front yard and, all that kind of stuff, like all day, all night. It was kind of like nonstop, happening. He has kids too, so I can understand all those concerns. But same thing, because I know him, we haven't had really any issues except for, I think, one night recently. We had a family that stayed there, and their, younger 18, 19-year-old kids were in the backyard, not partying or anything, just talking loud at like 1:30 in the morning. But, that's probably like the worst. He goes, this is way better than what was happening.
Anything's better.
I can take that every once in a while,
Yeah, anything's better compared to that. Well, I would say that the worst one that I've had so far to date happened, I want to say it was like August or September 2019. And I got a text from about like 5 or 6 neighbors when I woke up the next day saying like there was gunshots at 3 a.m. And I was like, oh my God, like if someone got shot or if like there's holes in my wall, this is really bad. Turns out that, I called the guest. They were like, oh yeah, we heard that too. We were wondering where that came from. I'm like, every person texted me saying that it came from your house. It was definitely you. Don't tell me you were wondering where that came from. But anyway, it turns out that one of the neighbors actually saw, it was just some guy in the front yard, like shooting it up in the air, like a celebratory shot. And we found out that it was like basically a party had happened there that night. So it could have been a lot worse, but at that point I had a lot of pissed off neighbors, and one guy even called me and said, I don't know who's managing this for you, but they're doing a bad job. I was like, it's me. I'm sorry. But it was that time when I realized like, okay, we need to start like looking at how can we keep out these bad guests. And so we really started getting deep into like, all right, locals, here's what we need from them. Anyone with 0 reviews, here's what we need from them. Anyone who is even just within a 2 or 3 hour drive, here's what we need from them. And now, like, kind of like you, we just don't really have as many of those situations anymore. Just more of the little annoyances now. So have you had any gunshots at yours?
So we didn't have, it wasn't really at ours, but we have, like, cause I work with I get a lot of like traveling nurses, people who work in the medical profession, contractors, computer engineer, tech people, and, people who just are coming from all over the world, really, to see Yosemite and Sequoia National Park. So because, we've tightened all these rules up and added deposits and, verifying, who they are, how many people are coming, a list of full names of all guests that are going to be staying at the property. It's gotten 1,000% better than, when we first started. But recently, the only thing, in Clovis, okay. So the guy, he stayed at like 3 other places that I've had. Every time they come in, they usually stay 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. And he sends me a video of, he goes, I'm scared. and he sends a video of the police helicopter flying over, doing that kind of thing. And then he goes, what did he say? He goes, there was gunshots, this is probably 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
This is 2 weeks ago. And then it was at one of the apartments, condo that we're renting. And so then the next thing is he starts sending video with like cops everywhere, lights, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, you know what? I have another place. And so I moved him from pretty much like Ashland to Clovis East.
Okay.
And even though the house was, more expensive, it was available. So,
okay.
And it's one of those kind of guests that, they repeat. I think that's their third or fourth time staying. They're looking to book 30 to 45 days at a time. Nice. And so I moved them to that other location. But yeah, sometimes like we don't have control of like what's happening like in the neighborhood. It could be in Clovis or wherever, and chaos is just, normal in today's atmosphere.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that you haven't actually had any gunshots at any of your places so far. Is there one story that like in the few years you've been doing this that comes to mind as the worst that you've had to deal with?
So let me think here. Yeah, I'm looking at the notes here. Okay. Yeah. So there's a property that we own, and somebody they had checked in, and they were staying for 30 days, about 25 days. And we had another, this is triplex that we own. And so, we've converted those to short-term rental, from regular rentals. And the guest checks in, didn't really have any issues. Then we had a second guest check in because we were converting units. And then the first guest had been there kind of by themselves for probably about 3 weeks. There was a 4-week stay or so, something like that. Then all of a sudden we get a call from the neighbor next door who was staying, saying, "Hey, I think that the neighbor next door is selling drugs."
Oh gosh.
I'm like, really? So I was like, okay, well, let me go out there and just kind of sit there and play undercover detective in my car. So I drive out there, and I'm sitting there. This is like 9 o'clock at night.
Okay.
And this is before COVID. So, and I'm watching them, and sure enough, like this is like the night before their checkout. They're literally like cars pulling up every like 5 to 7 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
For like an hour. So we call police department, waiting, told them, yeah, I'm just going to wait here, until you guys get here. So about an hour into it, they never show up. Call them again, Oh
gosh.
And so I I understand they're busy, probably doing, whatever else that, they've got to deal with, depending on what night. But yeah, literally it went on for, the whole entire hour. And so what do you do? They had like, there was like 2 people standing out front. One was going back and forth from the door to there, and so we did, we got them to check out the next day. But yeah, that was probably the worst one that I've seen where, where we've had that.
Yeah. Well,
I've also like added a bunch of stuff too, though, throughout this process. So like even right now, we're getting ready to add, some of the properties we have cameras on the outside.
Yep.
We're going to add cameras to every single property. Like we have like the Nest, either Nest or Ring at all the doors. But now after the trash scenario with the guy throwing trash all over the guest car and all that stuff, I think it's better just to kind of have video out there so that way, next time I can just go and knock on his door and be like, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did your wife leave you? Did your dog leave? Is your truck broke down?
Yeah, I was going to say, is this a country song?
Yeah.
So what have you seen cost-wise for like full surveillance like that?
We've used in the past an Arlo system that because I used to actually put these on all of our flip sites where you could just put a camera randomly anywhere you want in the tree or something like that, and then it goes directly to my cell phone. So those run $20 a month for the service through my cell phone, and it doesn't need internet or anything. It actually just runs remotely.
Really?
So I've used those before. But now, I mean, we're kind of looking around because I want to find something that runs on solar where we don't have to run cable wires everywhere, and we can kind of put them up, because we've had like the Arlo systems from Costco that we put up. Then, my manager and maintenance person, they'll usually go, change the batteries out, every week, and then they're monitoring those cameras. So those are, if you get those, I think the 6-pack at Costco is like $400 or $500, something like that.
Yeah.
And then you can add the solar panels to each one of those.
Okay.
So that way you don't have to charge them, and then they'll just run off your internet. But yeah, I really want a wireless system. So if you or if anybody else, happens to come across something, that'd be great.
Yeah, if anyone can find one of those and sees this, just go ahead and DM me on Instagram at Fearless Kyle. Let's find Mitch some solar and wireless for cameras. And I think that's a good point for everyone to understand, is that when you add cameras, it's not just for your safety, it's for neighbors' safety. It's for being able to help with filing claims with Airbnb, but also, I mean, we just put it in every single one of our messages as soon as people try to book with us is, hey, there's a camera. And so if you're doing shady stuff, we're going to know about it. So you might as well just look for another place. And that has really helped keep out a lot of people. Have you found that to be the same? Are you doing similar things?
Yeah. I mean, one other incident that I'll bring up, the story was, we had, somebody came in, and two stories. I'll give you the first one. The first one, we had somebody check in, and so we've kind of learned a lot of lessons now. Like, we bolt all of the headboards to the walls and bolt the beds to the headboards. We actually strap all the TVs to the entertainment systems now, and try to secure everything as much as possible. In the beginning, there was a couple times where, like, we came into 2-bedroom, one bath. There was only one TV in the living room. The bed was set up in the living room. The TV was in the bedroom. This is like a 2-3 night stay.
Oh my gosh.
Somebody had peed in the bed.
Oh,
so, just odd things like that, had happened. And then, another time, this actually happened last year, where someone checked in, stole someone else's ID, or actually had their ID and their credit card, and set up an Airbnb account, and then checked in, and then stole all the bedding, the TV, half the kitchen stuff. They stayed there, the full like 2 or 3 nights.
Yeah.
But yeah, took all that stuff. So now, we're bolting everything down. It doesn't matter what neighborhood or where it's at. Everything's completely bolted down. And then, that way we can try to prevent it. But, some of the things that I've added too is, like, we've gotten strict on the rules.
Yeah.
By charging, $500 to $1,000 deposits on every single stay. And once we did that, and then also really tightening down on the cleaning, the rules for cleaning and stuff like that, because, some of the people, like, and they're not doing it intentionally, but, they're coming in, their kids have mud on their shoes, and they come in the house and jump up and down on the white linen with dirty, muddy shoes, And so now what we've done is, we've kind of put signs up everywhere, decorative signs, we will say. Okay. Like reminders, to be respectful, take your shoes off, have a good time.
Yeah.
But also, in the instructions in multiple locations, and before check-in and after check-in, and at the end of the stay, we're reminding them to leave the property in the condition that they found it in, and that their cleaning fee only covers general, like, normal cleaning fees. And if it takes the cleaners longer than the allotted time, that we're going to charge them $50 an hour for every hour it takes beyond that, because we've seen houses where, we keep the properties in immaculate condition.
Right.
So, kind of like what you were saying before, the difference between, because I own several hundred, doors, and the difference between what we're doing with short-term rental versus a regular renter is, the properties are cleaned frequently. They're kept in immaculate condition,
Yep.
whether I own it or we're renting it, for
Right.
arbitrage. So, but sometimes I've seen 6-8 hour timeframes to clean a house where somebody just
And so now you're just
turned it
basically, rather than trying to file a claim, you're just taking that out of the security deposit when you're refunding the guests with the security deposit. Is that right?
You know what? Since we started that, and we've told them $50 an hour, I think I don't think we've had any issues. In fact, because for a while, one of the problems that was happening was like people not taking their shoes off, jumping up and down on the beds, like eating in the beds. We've even had people say, "Oh, there was a stain on the sheet," and I would tell them, "Well, I'm not sure how that happened because it was brand new, and you're the first person to stay there."
Yeah.
So just overcoming some of that stuff now is like, because we've seen so many different things where, we're using all white linens because you can bleach every single time. And with COVID, we're cleaning, we're sanitizing, we're fogging, the properties now. But, so what we're doing is we're just kind of reminding people to be responsible for your actions.
There you go.
And if
That's
not,
good.
we're going to charge you,
Yeah, as it should be. All right, we've talked about some bad, some good, and now let's talk about one annoying before we run off here. I've got an annoying story right now, and maybe you've got something similar. I actually just posted about this in our Facebook group, which is Airbnb Masterminds. If you're not a part of that group is growing very rapidly, and we got a lot of good information flowing in there. So make sure that you go onto Facebook and just Google on Facebook the Airbnb Masterminds. But I got my first 2-star review ever. I was so disappointed. I've had probably on 2 hands I can count how many 3 stars I've had, and I don't even like getting 4 stars. Like those bug me. So to get a 2-star, I was like, what in the world happened? So I looked at the review and I looked at which property this guy was at, and I was able to kind of relive a little bit in my mind of what happened. And it was one of those things, man, where, all right, so the good part of this is that I learned it as a lesson that it really doesn't matter. Even if you get one bad review, if you've got 20 different properties, if you've got 30 reviews on this place, it's not going to affect you that much. And it's going to get pushed down after the next 2 or 3 stays anyway. But it still hits you kind of personally, right? You get that bad review and you're like, ouch. But this guy, we had with the last guest, they complained about hot water. And so we had a maintenance guy show up during that last guest, and the maintenance guy said, "Oh, we're going to have to replace something on this valve, but I don't have that piece, so I got to come back tomorrow." Well, that's when this next guest showed up, and I guess my assistant forgot to tell him that this maintenance person was going to show up. And so the maintenance person knocked on his door at like 9 a.m., and the guest was like, "I wasn't told about this." And so the maintenance person called us. They said, "Hey, we can't go in there. This guest doesn't want us in there." I texted the guest immediately. I was like, "I'm so sorry if that wasn't communicated to you. That's definitely our fault. Don't worry about it. We, is there anything we can do to remedy the situation for you?" No response. Then he posts on the review that, wasn't told I was going to be there. And he was so nervous now about the stay that he left a night early because he didn't feel safe. And I was like, dude, I texted you right away apologizing, saying that we're sorry that the guy wasn't there. And then he went on in the rest of the review to say like, place wasn't ready at 4, which is definitely not true. And then the other part was, and the gates were left open, so the apartment didn't feel so secure. And I'm like, every gate at an apartment during the day is open, and at night it's closed. That's every apartment you go into. And so I'm like, even if all this stuff was true, is that worth 2 stars? Like that's you. When I think of 2 stars, man, I think of like the place wasn't even ready for me. Like it was completely trashed. And like, there was no communication. I couldn't get a hold of the host, nothing like that. And I'm like, man, like I could see maybe 3 or 4 stars, but 2, that one hurt. So, but anyway, long story short, the listing went from a 4.9 to a 4.82, so it barely hurt it. And we've already got someone that's looking to book for the entire next month. So it really doesn't hurt it overall, but you're just like, man, screw you.
Yeah. I had something like that recently where, and I don't know what happened. why it dropped so much, but we were at like a 4.8 whatever, for the property. It was completely renovated, but the guests came in, they stayed, they checked in, and they said that they had a plumbing back, or like that the water was draining slow in the shower. So I was like, okay, so we sent maintenance over immediately. They snaked the line out. It was fine. So then it was like a 2-week stay. So then about a week into the stay, they messaged again saying, "Oh, the shower is backing up again," and we saw a roach. And I was like, "Well, we have pest control, service on every single property. Even the rental arbitrage ones I do, I take care of all the pests, separately, so that way we don't have issues." So I was like, okay, well, I mean, that can happen. I'm not going to say it can't.
Right.
I'm just standing there. So I said, okay, so we contacted pest control, contacted second plumber, and said, if they could go out there. So then the guest denied access to the property. And I was like, okay, well, would you like, we can move you to another property. Here's, the link for that property. And so then they said, oh, no, that's okay. We're just going to go ahead and stay. So I was like, all right. So then, we get to the night before checkout, and then they started complaining about the shower again. And I was like, okay, well,
you tried to fix it.
They offered to send somebody out there, and you didn't allow them to. So then I offered to give them a refund, a partial refund, on their stay.
Yeah.
And then there, we're constantly following up, with the guests to make sure, that they're enjoying their stay. We want to earn their 5-star review. Is there anything, during your stay, if there's anything that you need, just let us know. So with that, the guest says, I'll get back to you. And then went radio silent, never heard from them again. They checked out. So then like 3 or 4 days later, I get a message from Airbnb stating that the guest complained that I was trying to bribe them to give me a 5-star review.
Wow.
So I was like, what?
Oh my gosh.
So they gave us like a 1 or a 2-star review, something like that. And it dropped it from like, and I think I was sharing with you before. I was like, I don't know how it went from a 4.8, almost a 4.9 to 4.3.
Yeah.
And then you get the message from Airbnb, oh, you're on the verge of, where if you drop below a certain rating, we could deactivate the property and da-da-da-da-da. And so now I'm like, well, I'll just deactivate it and relist it, because, by the time, and I did respond to the review, and I put in there, okay, yeah, the guest did, state that, they had a shower that was draining slow, and I kind of put it in there too, because, we take these, this is our profession, and we want to provide, great housing and great service. And so, but I mean, there's probably 25 reviews past that one pretty quick, but still, it's like, okay, well, let's go back, like I paused the listing after that. We went in, we looked at everything, took care of the issue, but those reviews are lasting, people are bored and they start reading through them and they're like, oh no, like the person put in there, they put a bunch of comments in there about the property, being deceiving, and that everything's completely brand new. I'm like, I don't know what we're deceiving about, but it is what it is. I mean, you're not going to make everybody happy,
right.
And that's just part of the business.
Well, and I think too, if you have, call it a 4.9 star rating on a property, and you have all these amazing reviews, and then you have that one glaring bad review, you're either going to have someone that's going to book it and says, okay, this person was obviously really just trying to like leave a bad review because that was their mission. Or that person's be like, oh, I see one bad review, I don't want to stay there. And you probably don't want to host that person anyway, because they have unrealistic expectations to begin with. So man, it's a battle every day with this stuff. But the one thing I want to give to people as a little bit of an encouragement is, Mitch and I have been doing this for a few years now. We have over 25 properties. We also have a great team that deals with a lot of these situations as well. We just like to have our hands on a few things too, to make sure that, we're protecting our business. And so if you are looking at getting started in Airbnb and you hear these stories and now suddenly you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to get started, believe us, it's completely worth it. It is the cash flow and just the joy of like getting another unit and being able to do it. And, Mitch, you've said before, I don't want to own the place. I want to own the cash flow, and like being able to do that without actually owning a house. Like, think about it this way. You can keep on doing your 9-to-5 job, which you hate, and you hate your boss, or you can take a complaint from a guest every once in a while, or have to deal with an upset neighbor every once in a while. I think I'd rather have that lifestyle. So anyway, with that being said, Mitch, thanks for jumping on, talking the good, bad, and the annoying. Anything else you want to share before we log off here?
No, I appreciate the conversations we have, and I'm glad that we're getting the opportunity to kind of share, the conversations, and it'll help people out there. I mean, this is by far, I've flipped houses, apartment complexes, I've done ground up construction, and by far, if someone's trying to leave their 9-to-5 job, this is probably the easiest, fastest, and least expensive way to do it.
I love it. That's great advice. Perfect. Mitch, thanks so much, man. And we'll see you next time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Show notes for this one. If you want to go relive this, it's fearlesskyle.com/good, bad, annoying. Good, bad, annoying. That's what the show notes are going to be for this one. So, honestly, guys, like, we both shared our worst stories, right? Mine was the gunshot one, which, was going to be, we thought was going to be just horrible, and then ended up just being some celebratory shots, which still is not okay. And then, Mitch with the neighbor, and then the drug deal stuff. Like, there's stuff that is scary, but at the end of the day, it could be a lot worse. And it's about getting all of this information, figuring out, okay, where did we go wrong? How did this person get in our house? Where were the red flags? And then understanding how to just completely block out those red flags so that those guests don't show up again. And that's what our course is going to teach you. So go to fearlesskyle.com. Check out the Airbnb Kickstart course. It's under the Airbnb tab. Again, 20% discount right now going on for that, and would love to see you jump on. So that's it today for the Fearless Investor Podcast. Thanks for helping us, or allowing us to help you to conquer the world of investing, of Airbnb, and talk about our fun stories. We'll see you next time.